Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Tuesday, January the 16th, 2024. This evening, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Acting Village Clerk, Sylvia Luke.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Sucker,
Here.
Trustee Robinson,
Here.
Trustee Johnson,
Here.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan. Here. Trustee Klein.
Here.
Mayor Van Duzen.
Here, we have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Sucker, seconded by Trustee Klein. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker,
Aye.
Trustee Robinson,
Aye.
Trustee Johnson,
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Lovan. Aye. Trustee Klein.
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen.
Aye, the motion passes. Before we move on, is there anybody here from one of the social service agencies that is an applicant for CDBG? Good, because we had canceled the program this evening, and I wanted to make sure nobody showed up. We tried to get in touch with everybody to make sure. So, the next item on the agenda is the swearing in of a new Deputy Police Chief, John Oakley. Our Acting Village Clerk, Sylvia Luke, will do the honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, John Oakley,
Having been appointed to the office of Police Deputy Chief
having been appointed to the office of Police Deputy Chief
in the village of Skokie,
in the village of Skokie,
in the county of Cook,
in the county of Cook,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Police Deputy Chief according to my best of ability.
of the office of Police Deputy Chief according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Let me introduce our Police Chief, Jesse Barnes. I thought I saw our immediate past chief, Brian Baker, is with us. And Fighter Chief Hoflick is also with us. Chief, welcome. Would you introduce your family and friends, please?
Sure, there's quite a few of them, so give me a minute. I have my wife Julie, my three sons Ethan, Nolan, and Mason. I have my mother-in-law Karen, father-in-law Carl. I have my brother-in-law John, his future wife in like 3 or 4 days, Gina. I have my brother-in-law Travis, my two nieces Layla and Ellie. And then we have my sister Christine, my brother-in-law Dennis, and then their 5 children, James, Jocelyn, Jacob, Johnny, and Jones.
And the chair of our Board of Fire and Police Commission will swear in our new police sergeant. Will Evans will do the honors. Will?
Good evening, Mayor Van Dusen,
trustees, and all that is here on this very special evening. I want to especially acknowledge the family and friends of tonight's appointees. This is a proud moment for all of you. I extend my congratulations to you and thank you for your supporting your loved one during their journey leading to this moment. This is the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commission. I'm going off script a little bit. We do a lot of work. We spend a lot of time, interview and go over a lot of paperwork, but this is like the proudest moment for me when we can come in here and swear in a new appointee. Tonight, we're swearing in a new police sergeant. We must never forget that the men and women who serve as first responders deserve our admiration. They're often first on the scene of a tragedy and provide security and comfort to those who are suffering. We invest our first responders with the authority to promote and keep the peace. They have earned our respect, our support, and our gratitude, and it is my great honor to be part of this very special ceremony. You follow along. So you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. Rogelio Cantu.
I, Rogelio Cantu,
Do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
do solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States of America,
the state of Illinois,
the state of Illinois,
the ordinances of the Village of Skokie,
the ordinances of the Village of Skokie,
and the rules and regulations
and the rules and regulations
of the Police Department and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commissioners,
of the Police Department and the Skokie Board of Fire and Police Commissioners,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of a police sergeant to the best of my ability.
of a police sergeant to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
And Sergeant, would you introduce your family and
Yes.
friends this evening?
My beautiful wife, Catherine, my daughter, Isabella, my mother, Leandra, my father, Rogelio, my brother, Laurel, my cousin Angel, my favorite cousin Dan, my brother, who's wearing his, fire hat, okay? My friend Tony, my friend Miguel, my brother from another mother, Jesus, my boy Jerry over there, and Amir. Yeah.
You're sure?
Yeah, all my friends, yeah. That's everyone. Yep.
Well, congratulations.
You got me. Thank you.
Let's take a break for a couple minutes to congratulate our new appointees, and that we'll resume in just a couple minutes. We'll be back in session. Next item is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen and trustees. Good evening, everyone. Items A, B, and C as part of my agenda this evening were approved as part of tonight's consent agenda. That completes my report.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is report of our corporation counsel, Assistant Counsel Jim McCarthy.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. Two items are on Corporation Council's report tonight. Item A is on the agenda for first reading and adoption. This resolution will approve and allow for the release of the executive session minutes for the meetings listed. A resolution regarding these minutes was previously presented at the September 5th, 2023 Village Board meeting. The vote of the Village Board resulted in a request for guidance from the General Counsel from the Illinois State Senate. The September 5th, 2023 resolution was never executed by the mayor. Although the village has not yet received the requested guidance regarding the interpretation of the vote, the Public Access Counselor on December 1, 2023 issued a binding opinion with regard to the release of closed session minutes. Since this opinion affected so many municipalities, the Illinois Municipal League on December 22nd, 2023 released guidance to its members going forward. The village is in the process of reviewing and revising procedures regarding to the release of executive session minutes in accordance with state statute, the above-mentioned binding opinion, and IML guidance, and developing a policy addressing this matter. As such, this resolution differs from the September 5th, 2023 resolution by not including a section for the destruction of verbatim minutes. This policy will be presented to the village board for approval in the near future. Additionally, Mayor and trustees, the resolution as drafted contains a Scrivener's error in that the resolution references Section 2.06C, as in cat, of the Open Meetings Act, when in fact it should have read Section 2.06D, as in dog, of the Open Meetings Act. If approved, this Scrivener's error will be corrected prior to the signature by the mayor and acting clerk.
A motion regarding item A as presented by Jim McCarthy this evening would be in order, and for the record, it's section 2.06D of the Illinois State Statutes. Trustee Johnson, seconded by Trustee Robinson. Are there any comments, any questions? Trustee Klein.
Yeah, the only question I have is regarding, in the executive sessions, a lot of what we deal with there is, I would call it personal and health-related and protected by HIPAA laws. How are we protecting the people where we things that we discuss that are not, should not be available to the public?
Well, we simply would keep them in executive session and not release them.
Okay, so we are going to edit that? We will edit all?
And that's up to the village board, but yes.
Okay.
And I assume that would be part of the policy deliberations.
Correct.
Right.
Obviously, workers' compensation and HIPAA would come under something like that, I would assume, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my concern.
Trustee Johnson.
These resolutions have my full support, but I did want to ask about the policy that's being created for our semi-annual closed session minute reviews. First, how often are we going to approve closed session minutes moving forward? Are we going to do this kind of after every closed session, or are we going to do this just once every 6 months following the semi-annual review?
That's one of the questions that I think we have to decide. For example, with workers' compensation, I think we would have to approve them in public at the next board meeting, because there's usually a disbursement of some sort. So I think we would have to. But from the IML guidance and the PAC opinion, every 6 months, we would take up them and formally do a public approval. But I think there would be like under HIPAA, there would be exceptions to that general rule. But that's the policy that I think Mr. McCarthy was referring to.
Correct, and that's not finalized at this point, but yes, along those lines.
Okay.
And I don't know if members of the board have seen the IML opinion.
I thought it was really helpful, and they didn't say which way they suggested that public bodies should go, but they did kind of suggest doing it with the 6-month review, which seems the simplest way to do it.
I think so.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask about how we're gonna do, if we're gonna do kind of closed sessions for these reviews, because the Open Meetings Act kind of just assumes that the semi-annual review will be conducted in closed session because the subject matter is confidential in nature. So I kind of have 2 questions. I guess, why are we not meeting in closed session for this review tonight? And can we make closed session discussions part of the board's procedure in the future?
And that would be part of, I think, the policy that, and that's part of what the PAC opinion, that's the dilemma that the opinion presents. You can either try and make it simple, or as the opinion seems to render, it's going to have to be complicated. You put it on the public agenda, then you take a motion to go into executive session. You go into executive session, discuss everything, and then go back into session, take a motion to go back into session, and then vote on it in public. I think there's got to be a simpler way to do it.
I would suggest just doing a closed session at one meeting and then the following meeting, doing the public final action.
That sounds perfectly reasonable. I would prefer to do it something along those lines.
Okay. And it's not related to this policy, but it's just kind of the big lingering question from the September meeting. I think we still need to figure out what constitutes a majority vote of the board. We did not get outside legal counsel advice on this, but I guess moving forward, can we agree that Village Code requires a majority vote of 4 members for an affirmative action?
The question is, under the Supreme Court's decision, abstentions become the majority vote. So in other words, if you have a smaller majority, let's say it's 2-1, then under the Supreme Court, the abstention, let's say there's 2 abstentions, those abstentions become yes votes. And what we were, in essence, what we were asking was for either a ratification of that interpretation of the Supreme Court's decision, or is there a different road? And we never have gotten that. So I'm still in a quandary, because I think the Supreme Court's decision was fairly blunt and straightforward, but not everybody agrees with interpretation. We have lawyers, I guess.
I know there's some legal nuance, but at least personally, I think what's included in the section of Village Code about majority vote, I think at least for our board, makes it pretty clear that no less than 4 members should constitute a majority vote for affirmative action. That's my reading of our Village Code, but I hope that this can be clarified. That's all for me.
Call the roll.
Trustee Sudker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Logan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes.
Item B is on the agenda for first reading and adoption as well. This resolution will approve and allow for the release of the remainder of executive session minutes from 2023. This is in accordance with state statute and the binding opinion released by the Public Access Counselor on December 1st, 2023, with regard to the release of closed session minutes. Again, the village is in the process of reviewing and revising procedures regarding the release of executive session minutes in accordance with state statute, the above-mentioned binding opinion, and IML guidance, and developing a policy addressing this matter. This policy will be presented to the village board for approval in the near future. And again, the resolution for item B, similar to the resolution for item A, contained a Scrivener's error, again referencing section 2.06C CAT, when in fact it should have referenced 2.06D as in dog. And again, if approved, the Scrivener's error will be corrected prior to the signature by the mayor and the acting clerk.
A motion is in order, trustee Johnson, seconded by trustee Sucker. Are there any questions or comments? Being none, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sucker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Slovan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein? Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes.
And that completes my report, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, before new business, could I have an item under unfinished business? I was not present at the end of our last meeting when Trustee Kuhn proposed a plan to revive the inclusionary housing ordinance that we've been discussing since last May. But I did prepare a short memo that I passed out at the beginning of the meeting, and I have extra copies if anyone would like to see it. First, I just want to say I fully support the board moving forward. I'm glad it was brought up, but I do want to offer an alternative proposal that I think is much simpler and that I hope is more responsive to where the board is at. At the moment, our inclusionary housing ordinance has become, in my opinion, a bit convoluted. The board is now considering having 4 different tiers to calculate how many affordable units a development should have, and the board is now considering 2 different tiers for a fee in lieu option that allows developers to bypass on-site affordable units altogether. My fear is that this ordinance is becoming less of an inclusionary housing policy and more of just an affordable housing fee for developers. So I wanted to propose just a very simple alternative of 1 flat fee of 5% affordability for all new developments, but no fee in lieu option. What this would mean is that the percentage of required affordable units would start just as low as Trustee Pierce-Slovan originally proposed in May at 5%, but that 5% would come directly in the form of new on-site affordable units, and that is what the goal, I think, of an inclusionary policy is. I know we've struggled to find consensus around this policy. I went back and I listened to our conversation from May. I thought it was clear that the majority of the board seemed to want to start slow to get some good data and then consider revising this process in the future. And so I'm proposing something that I think is responsive to where the board is at, and I would like to simply ask that the board consider this alternative solution ahead of the next inclusionary housing discussion in February or March, and hopefully we can discuss it more then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next item on the agenda is new business, case number 2023-02M, and Johanna Neiden and Jeff Berman.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor and the village board. I'm a very, very, very last-minute substitution, so I'm going to pitch it here as best I can. I think we're doing 2023-02M first, correct?
Yes.
Okay. A request by Thompson Coburn LLP on behalf of the DDRTC at the Retail Shopping Center at 5555 West Toohey Avenue for an amendment to the site plan approval ordinance 89-6-Z-2042 through the modified review procedure. The Community Development Department received a request from DDRTC at 5555 West Toohey to amend site plan approval ordinance 89-6-Z-2042 through the modified review procedure. The site plan was approved in 1989 to allow construction of multiple tenant shopping center at the site in a B4 regional shopping district. The shopping center meets all zoning ordinance requirements. The owner of the shopping center worked with the Community Development Department, Forestry Division, and Engineering Division to make a plan to demolish the existing 667 space parking structure known as 7001 Central Avenue to be replaced with a 446 at grade parking spaces lot. The proposed site plan will include a total of 2,557 parking spaces and a surplus of 763 spaces, satisfying both the Village of Skokie and the Village of Niles parking requirements. Improved landscaping was an important consideration in the review of this proposal. The ownership group and the Forestry Division staff worked to ensure the following goals are met: increased shade tree canopy, increased tree diversity, net increase of approximately 200 additional trees throughout the property, and preserve as many trees as possible for approval of the village forester.
A motion would be in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Johnson. Are there comments, questions? Trustee Robinson.
Not a lot of comments, but I just wanted to ask Ms. Knighton if she would just talk about the improvements and all the sustainability efforts that are being addressed here.
Sure. The demolition of this existing structure will afford some surface parking. While we will not be able to put trees due to some contamination issues, this will add additional green space in that space, which will hopefully reduce the heat island effect. Adding new trees, diversification of the species. There are some trees that haven't done as well in that lot, so bringing trees that will hopefully provide better shade, better mitigation of that heat. It's a very large parking surface. So those are the big pieces. I'd say adding the additional green space.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Sudker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson? Trustee Pierce-Logan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item is Plan Commission Case 2023-30P Zoning Chapter Amendment.
Yes, thank you, Ed. It's November 16, 2023 meeting. The Plan Commission reviewed the village's request to amend Section 118, Article 2, Article 9, and Appendix A of the Skokie Village Code to establish provisions for co-working as a special use on retail streets in the mixed-use zoning district. The proposal is a response to the increased popularity of co-working spaces as a result of the changes in the typical work model since the COVID pandemic. Staff believes co-working to be more of a hybrid use than typical office space, and one that is an activity generator and will bring people downtown. Staff recommends retaining the regulatory controls that are embedded in the special use permit process to ensure each site is compatible with the surrounding uses. Making co-working a special use on retail streets will allow staff and the Plan Commission to review and approve the business operations plan, including rules of membership, and to ensure that there is sufficient operational oversight and business leadership. It is also recommended that the ground floor windows of communal areas be transparent to allow interior views from the street, and attached to this report is a retail streets map. The Plan Commission recommends by a vote of 8 ayes and 0 nays that Chapter 118 zoning of the Skokie Village Code be amended as proposed in the staff report for 2023-30P.
A motion on Plan Commission Case 2023-30P is in order. Trustee Robinson, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Are there any comments or questions? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Sudker?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Aye.
Trustee
Aye.
Johnson?
Sorry. Aye.
Trustee Pierce-Logan?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Mayor Van Duzen?
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The concluding item this evening is public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to address the village board?
My name is Lauren Grodnicki. I wasn't planning to comment tonight, but in light of the earlier discussion, I had some thoughts that I'd like to share. And I don't know a whole lot about the law, especially as regarding what villages can and can't do. So if what I'm saying is incorrect, please just say, okay, never mind. But the conversation that came up was about the vote in September where there were some abstentions and then there was a 2-to-1 majority. And that's not a ratio, that's like the actual numbers. And as a member of the public, I was surprised to learn that all of the abstentions just went with the majority. And so I would urge you that if the answer comes back that we can strike out in our own direction, that you consider codifying that you need 4 yes votes in order to consider it to be a majority. Because otherwise it feels kind of like you're getting to get the vote without people having to go on record as saying one way or another. So that was all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a public comment that I'm going to make from the public podium. Awesome. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. As I mentioned at the last village board meeting, starting tonight, I'm going to be using public comments to give the board very short 3-minute presentations about what I see as the need to reform the Village of Skokie's legal department. I have now been advocating for reform in this department for over 3 years, but the village board has still not taken any actions whatsoever in response to concerns about the politicization of this department. From my perspective, the problem is very clear. Since at least the 1950s, it has been the practice of Skokie mayors and trustees to appoint their own political campaign and political party leaders to high-paying administrative positions in the village legal department. I would describe this practice as political hiring, or what's sometimes called political patronage, which is appointing public employees in consideration and anticipation of their political work for elected officials. And because the legal department is under the supervision of the village board, this political hiring is happening despite Skokie's council manager form of government. This practice, something I really want to stress, this practice predates any current member of the village board. No member of the village board currently created this problem. I would argue that this is a problem that this board has inherited from past boards. From my perspective, there's a very simple, very effective solution. The board can update the board's appointment process for village attorneys in our village code. This has not happened, to my knowledge, since the formal creation of our legal department in 1957, so this process is pretty outdated. It's just a few sentences of village code, and so a policy update is not really difficult. All that is needed to move forward is for a majority of the village board to agree to move forward. I think this policy making could be accomplished really in just a month or two. I will remind you all that you actually already unanimously agreed to do this back in May. Your decision was even reported in the Chicago Tribune. Nothing has happened in the last 8 months because this ordinance has privately been scrapped by the board. During future meetings, I want to talk about some of the major differences between how the board appoints our nonpartisan village manager and how the board appoints our village attorneys. But tonight, I want to end by simply replying to a comment that was made at our last meeting. Trustee Sutker, 2 weeks ago, you said something that really resonated with me. In response to my continued concerns about our legal department, you said simply, we need to move on.
Trustee.
Can I get 2 sentences? I'll say, in response, I want you and the board to know that I, maybe more than anyone, would really like to move on from this issue. For me, the only way to move on is through board action, not board avoidance. Thank you.
Okay. The village board has considered this and has decided to remain with the system as it is. When somebody runs for office, as all of us have, you do so by making certain pledges to the public. And as part of that, you want people in office who agree with your policy. And part of that is having people in the legal department who agree with that policy. It's standing procedure going back eons in the United States. It's part of democracy. But I would caution the trustee to be very careful. We have a tradition in the village of not using village board meetings for campaign appearances. You're a candidate for office announced. And I would just caution you to be very careful about using public comments as a campaign
Oh,
appearance.
that's not what I'm doing at all.
I'm-
I also would, I think that would be inadvisable. I'm speaking
I'm
tonight solely
just-
as a resident.
As I, well, you're more than a resident. You're not just James Johnson's citizen. Whether you like it or not, we all took an oath to not only uphold the constitutions of the United States and the state of Illinois, but to see to their faithful execution. And that's not what the public, nobody in the public takes that oath. And so when you leave your seat and leave a meeting, I would say you're not fulfilling your obligation to your oath. But that's neither here nor there.
I would argue that I'm trying to address a systemic policy issue within our village government, so I would argue that I'm operating very
Not
much
being
within
there
that.
and not hearing the public is not. But regardless, to then get up and participate or cause histrionics by saying, I'm citizen. No, you're trustee James Johnson.
There are no
And
histrionics.
when you speak, that is who you are. You may not like that. You may wish it were otherwise, but in fact, that if I were to say, I'm going to get up and I'm Citizen Van Dusen, the newspapers would report Mayor Van Dusen. That's the oath of office that I took. Everybody here has taken an oath of office. So as I say, I caution you very strongly, and this is just advice, that I caution you very strongly, so.
I appreciate that. Respectfully to the trustees, if you update the village's appointment process for attorneys and fix the root cause of the problems in our legal department, I will really happily move on and put this issue behind us. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Sucker,
I move we adjourn.
we are adjourned. Not quite, almost record time.